Welcome to South Asian Environment Dialogue. As you know, it's a weekly program where we talk about a range of issues on environment and climate change in the South Asian countries. And there are so many issues to talk about. Now, in this particular period of the year, we are used to get the COP, the climate summits, the global climate summits. Unfortunately, this year with COVID and pandemic, we are not going to have the COP. So we thought in the particular program that let us have discussions on the critical issues of climate change, its negotiation, and all this during this month. So in this month of November and December, we are discussing various facets of climate change across the world, more particularly in South Asia. And today we are going to discuss a very, very important topics. That is climate migration. Is it a boon or a bane? Many feel that climate migration is a way out. Many talk about is an adaptation mode. Many feel it's not really a boon, it's a bane. So this program, which is hosted by Climate Channel, a Canadian television network, in collaboration with the Plurals, which is an India media network, we are trying to focus on these issues. And today we are to be talking about this climate migration, and I have a great panel to talk about these issues. Before I give the overall intro, let me introduce the panel for you. I have with me my very good friend, Sanjay Vashist. Sanjay is the Director of Climate Action Network South Asia. Welcome, Sanjay, to the program.
Thank you.
I have with me Gothami Chandraratne. Gothami is the Director Operations, Janathakshan, Sri Lanka. I have with me Dipak Jade. Dipak is the Senior Researcher, Watershade Organization Trust, WOTR, India. I think he works in the Maharashtra region mostly. Yeah. I have with me Maryam Shabir from SDPI, that is Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Pakistan. And I have with me Hrideyash Joshi, a very, very good friend of mine. We have covered many COPs together, an independent journalist from India. And Shamsuddoha from CPRD, Center for Participatory Research and Development, Dhaka, Bangladesh. So that's the panel to you. I think we have covered all the ends. And for the coming 1 hour or so, we'll be discussing various facets. And let me also tell you on the very beginning that Climate Action Network South Asia is conducting a particular project on migration across South Asia. And I believe Sanjay can throw more light on that. The report is due anytime, very shortly, I believe. So the report, when the report will come on, we'll be perhaps discussing at greater length. But today, it's a kind of a curtain raiser to that report. We'll be discussing various facets of migration across South Asia. And before I go to Sanjay for the initial remark and to start the ball rolling, let me share a couple of data with all of you. I was looking at the data and the level of migration. Many call it displacement. In 2019 June, it's a global report that 7 million people have been affected by the extreme weather. And that value twice compared to the displacement by violence and conflict. I am not undermining the impact of violence and conflict. I'm just trying to put it in perspective that how big climate change impact is. And it's getting bigger and bigger with days. And if you come to the South Asian, the data is showing that the climate impacts and disasters are increasing by every day, and mostly the poor and the vulnerable community are getting affected, be it India, be it Pakistan, be it Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, everywhere. And it's a very interesting study in World Bank by 2018, which shows that under worst possible scenario, by 2035, 40 million people are supposed to be affected by this migration and displacement, which can be hardly 20 million in the best possible scenario. So that shows the impact. That shows the impact of migration and what's happening around the world. But still, it's not, my personal understanding is still the migration is yet to be considered in a proper way in the global negotiation, and we need to push on that. So let's start with Sanjay. Sanjay, you have seen the report across the countries. I am sure that you have seen all the reports. Tell us briefly, what are the main findings the report have so far? I am talking about overall in South Asia. Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you, Jayanta. Thanks for the opportunity and indeed organizing this precursor. Let me tell you why we felt that this issue need to be covered, and then I'll just briefly touch upon what are the key findings that are emerging out of our research report also. I think one around 25 years back when we started talking about climate change as a problem, the first thing and first natural response from everyone was, hey, let's address it at source. So of course it was mitigation centric, and following that, and idea was that the way ozone depletion has been handled, similarly, cutting down greenhouse gases would mean the problem will be handled. But after some time, we realized no, it's a much more complicated problem. Climate is changing, temperature is going up, and we have to align our way of living as per the change that are already being observed, and that's where adaptation issue came up. But because ambition from developed countries was not enough, they were shying away from their responsibilities. And because adaptation actions were not enough, loss and damage started emerging. This became issue in 2012 Doha COP, and since then we started talking about loss and damage. Because of loss and damage of livelihoods and continuous disasters, which are more extreme in nature now, permanent losses to habitat and livelihood started happening, and migration started. And when we as a civil society started raising this, that we have to, government need to take that into consideration, the first response came and they tried to hide behind the fact that there are gaps in science. There is no correlation between climate change and migration. So we cannot frame any policy. So that was the genesis why we felt that climate-induced migration need to come up. Can South Asia, with many of our partners, we released a report in 2016, Climate Change Knows No Border. And that's when it became very clear that this is happening. In terms of whether climate migration is a boon or bane, if it is pull factors, basically for better opportunities, it is certainly boon. But if it is push factor, you are being thrown out of a habitat, it is certainly a bane. I'll put it that way. And that is coming out very, very clearly. In Bangladesh, CPRD studied on how riverine erosion is affecting migration, how salinization is happening, how people have to migrate, and the crops they can take in 1 year are reducing, yield is reducing. Similarly, in Pakistan, we look more from the impact on women. Of course, Maryam will reflect more on that. In India, we looked at drought conditions, and then we also looked at how in Maharashtra, how situation is there in hills and how in coastal. You were also part of that work. In fact, what we have found, the gaps in the regional level are one, national government do not recognize climate change as a driver for migration. That has come out very clearly. Second, there is no regional cooperation. We do have Thimphu climate declaration, we have Kathmandu climate declarations, but we do not have regional cooperation framework on how to coordinate if migration is happening from one country to another within region. That has been a gap. There's a huge gap in definitions. We don't have definition of whom do we call climate-induced migrant. We have a migration for, definition if it is war affected or conflict affected, but not because of climate change. You said World Bank has projected by 2035, 40 million. I'm sure these numbers will be much higher if we look at the ground. And almost 60% of 40 million, if we take that as a ballpark figure, would be from climate change, would be because of natural variability. And international cooperation, the process is very slow, and we have to, chase up. So our findings are migration is not on the table of any of the governments. Loss and damage is because of migration, because of that migration happening is not there.
So the very important point you raised, that you were saying that despite this huge number being affected, migration is yet to be an agenda on the table of most governments. Not only on the negotiation, not only the UN negotiation, but also on the respective government's table. That's what I think you were trying to drive at.
Absolutely.
Very important. I think, Sanjay, we need to probe it further. But before that, let us try to understand what these eminent scholars across South Asia have found in their respective countries. Let me start with Maryam. Maryam, Sanjay just told that you looked into the gender issues. I'm sure that you looked also other issues. So just talk us through very briefly about your finding in Pakistan. In which part of Pakistan you worked and what exactly your finding is, Maryam?
Yes, actually, our study focused on two areas largely. One was from the Punjab, Pakistan, which was Muzaffargarh, where climate-induced migrations happens due to floods mainly, and the other part is Tharparkar in Sindh province of Pakistan, where migrations happens due to heat waves and droughts. But my major focus was on droughts, but side by side, heat wave is also root cause for climate-induced migrations over there. So, when we talk about gender, let us very clearly also include men and children and old men as well, because gender doesn't exclude other genders as well.
Absolutely.
They also are equally affected by these climate-induced migrations. In fact, whole families are affected. But women are particularly affected in a way that there were very horrible cases in both parts, and there were very severe cases as well. If I talk about one aspect, which is harassment, it was very much over there in areas of Muzaffargarh during floods of 2010 and 2014. And on the name of help, few youngsters, or I shouldn't call them youngsters, but few men, what they did is that they, they mixed drugs in food items, and they had given to climate-induced migrants, females, and they were harassed, and some were raped as well. Unfortunately, we were not able to reach those rape victims over there, but that was one of the major and most scary finding over there. Another finding which was most important to me and the impact on women were pregnant women. They were not having, during floods, they were not having really medical facilities and medical camps over there. They were just having basic medical camps with basic medicines, but not particularly for pregnant women. And many women lost their newborns, or while giving birth, they were gone.
Because
and even after birth,
because the facilities were not there.
Yes, because there were during floods there were basic camps, medical camps, but those basic facilities do not help pregnant women, because pregnant women have other requirements as well when it comes to food or medicine or other medical facilities. And they were not having nutritional facilities as well. There were not enough food items. They didn't have clean water. They were having clean water for a few days, but not for the long term, because that situation remained over there for some time. They also suffered from water as well.
Okay, I'm just not interrupting you. Just a very quick supplementary question, which we find in India, that often when this kind of things happen, when the disasters happen, normally the male population, especially the one which is in between maybe 20 to 50, 40, 45, 50, they migrate or displace, whatever you call, and keeping the families back, the elderly and the women. So women are also being affected by that. And as you said, the social impact. I have heard many terms, and now I have heard a new term, climate rapist. So it's just a new term coming up that they must be called climate rapists, nothing else. So is it similar in Pakistan that when this mainly the men folk go away, leaving the women and the elderly to fetch for themselves?
Actually, there were many cases in which families were left behind. of course, the women were left behind, and a male member of the family had to migrate to the cities, or they had to migrate internationally for search of job, because in many cases they lost their livelihood, their crops were damaged, and their livelihood was gone in the form of small shops and small businesses, and their houses were damaged. So they had to move to another place to earn, to compensate that loss, and send remittances to their family. But they also had challenges at new places as well. But yes, in that cases, there were a lot of issues of adjustment and.
We'll be talking about the place. We'll be talking about the challenges in the new places subsequently. But let us go to Hrideyash. Hrideyash, you have worked in Indian perspective. I hope your network is fine. Hrideyash, can you hear me? Am I audible, Hrideyash? Hrideyash, can you hear me? I think there's still issues with Hrideyash.
Hrideyash, can you hear us? I can see.
Hrideyash, can you hear me?
No.
No, you cannot. Dipak, if you just can unmute yourself and kind of come on. Your experience in India, I think you work in the Maharashtra. So what's the situation out there? What's your finding? Briefly take us through your main findings.
Yeah. So our study was located in the Bid district of Maharashtra, which is in the Marathwada region. And traditionally it is known to be suffering from water scarcity due to recurrent droughts. But what we found out is that over the past few years, the intensity and the number of droughts have increased. And slowly the water scarcity has been increasing. So people have started digging and utilizing underground water also. But over the period of time, that water has also sort of very fast depleted. So now our study was mainly located in the rural areas. So farmers who were in the villages mainly dependent on agriculture as their primary labor, but in the absence of the main resource water, they had to migrate out. So generally, Bid district in Maharashtra and overall in India is known for supplying sugarcane laborers to the sugarcane factories throughout Maharashtra, especially in the western regions of Maharashtra, wherein they have irrigated and water supplies. So there has been trend of increasing migration over the past few years, and this is sort of exacerbated and increased due to the climatic factors. Because in the recent few years, when we were interacting with the villagers were saying that, especially in terms of rainfall, there has been irregular rainfall, there has been unseasonal rainfall, and there has been reduced rainfall. And secondly, even if they get the per normal rainfall of that year, generally it is very erratic, in the sense there could be sort of very long dry spells, or there could be short intensity rainfalls within a very short period of time. So this in terms causes.
So this is the situation out there.
Yeah.
Dipak, just quickly, that as you said, that this has been a climatic irregularity being pushing the migration on. What is the government response? I'm not talking about the government in the state level, that's a big one, but the regional government, panchayats, because they are quite close to these affected people. So what is their response? Are they capable enough to respond? Do they have that ability to plan for these people, or they don't have that?
Yeah, they do have the capabilities, because you must be aware, traditionally in Maharashtra, we do have this watershed development programs going on over the years. So this watershed development programs do address the issues of water scarcity to a greater extent. Apart from that, periodically, whenever there are shortages of water, state governments do organize fodder camps for livestock, because livestock is a key.
So government is responding to that situation to a way.
Yeah.
But have you found any holistic plan, or is it just basically a kind of a stopgap kind of scenario? Have you found any holistic, proper plan to counter this trend, or just basically kind of firewalling. But what exactly you have found?
What I would say is government from their side is planning because, but unfortunately over the years, the climatic variations have been such that the responses at time might not match the exact.
Okay, the responses of the government might not match the requirement. That's what you were saying. Let's see. Let's hear the other panelists. Let's go to Mohammad Shamsuddoha Saab from CPRD Bangladesh. As you know, Bangladesh is I would say the capital of migration in a way, because all the figures are showing that Bangladesh figure is at the very top. Even the figure that I was quoting, in fact, I should correct myself, it was a 2070 prediction of 40 million and 20 million at best possible scenario and 40 million in worst possible scenario. But Bangladesh is going to be the top one that's been predicted in the same report. What's the Bangladesh response and how you found in Bangladesh the migration pattern?
Thank you very much. In fact, you rightly mentioned that Bangladesh comes up several times in national and international negotiation when it talks about displacement and migration. And there are many scientific evidences that by 2050 or by end of the century, around 30 million or 50 million people will be displaced to be migrated from the coastal areas of Bangladesh. This is due to salinity intrusion, sea level rise, and also other climatic impact like cyclone. Thing is that in Bangladesh, migration is not nothing new. I mean, as Bangladesh is a climate affected country or disaster prone country, face displaced and migrated people every year, particularly for the river erosion and recently due to climate change for cyclone. Bangladesh government did some activities for addressing displacement, not migration, because displacement and migration is different thing. Displacement always falls, and due to any sudden event, some people displaced to the nearby areas, and government support them with some relief and rehabilitation activities, assuming that they will come back to their homes of origin because everything will be normal. But due to impact of climate change and due to continuous impact of climate change, particularly slow onset event, there is no scope to go back to their homes of origin. For instance, due to salinity intrusion, for instance, due to waterlogging, because there is no agricultural activities, there is no source of production. So when people don't find any productive activities, no agriculture, salinity, scarcity of drinking water, scarcity of food, then they're forced to be migrated. And we call them economic migration, forced by the impacts of climate change. Some people are trying to say that this is a kind of adaptation, but we are saying that this is failure of adaptation. And adaptation, when adaptation does not work, then people forced to be migrated. Unfortunately, in Bangladesh, we don't have any comprehensive program, even plans to address those climate-induced migration. We have some program, we had some program earlier, particularly to support river eroded people. We call them establishing cluster villages, good program. So building some houses for them and allocate some lands and offer them some livelihood options so that they can live there. But there is no major economic activities for them to do there. There is no business opportunities there, so they don't prefer to live in the good program or cluster villages. To me, migration is a major problem for Bangladesh, and it also will cause problem to other countries, neighboring countries.
Absolutely.
Because when people...
just a supplementary question, that in which part of Bangladesh you worked, in the Sundarbans area or other parts as well?
For research purpose, we work everywhere in Bangladesh, and particularly...
No, but this particular project of CAN South Asia, which part of the Bangladesh you covered?
We are part of CAN South Asia in two projects. Earlier, it was on the coastal areas.
Okay.
It was a scoping study or pilot study, but in the last 2 years, we implemented our project in a river eroded area. I mean, in the river basin of Padma River. So we try to identify whether the river erosion has the linkage to the impacts of climate change, because there is no scientific evidence that, yes.
Absolutely. I think I'll come back to you again, basically to know from you that, that as you said, that government is doing, but not really in a holistic manner. We need to know more about that. But let's go to, I don't know, Hrideyash has, Hrideyash, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you? Are you getting me?
Let's quickly, let's just talk us through your
Yeah.
area of the particular Scan South Asia project, and what's your major findings, Hrideyash?
Yeah, I couldn't hear all of you because I have a very weak network. But I understand because we all have been working together. What are the problems across the world? But in Uttarakhand, the Himalayan state, North Indian Himalayan state of India, we did this report from many parts of India, but I covered mostly Uttarakhand. And Uttarakhand, what we observed, Jayanta, is this that temperatures really have gone up. We know that this is a Himalayan region, a home of 10,000 glaciers. That's very alarming for all of us, and we have seen so many reports talking a lot about it. But rains have conspicuously. You go to any area, people have one complaint that rains have become erratic and they have lessened a lot. So water scarcity is there, and we know that big glacial river, though they come out from Himalaya, they are fed by forest rivers. They depend on rains. And, if the rains are not happening, the watershed is being weakened and these rivers are being weakened. It means the irrigation is getting affected. So this all is there. But if you ask me honestly, that is the migration is driven by climate change, I would say it is more of a policy problem, which we have addressed. And in conclusion, you will see what has to be done. Because what we have seen here is that at policy level, the weak policy has, the people have migrated because of it. What we could understand there, that this climate impact has sped up. It has, accelerated this problem. And crops are failing regularly. There is a market, we have mentioned that market. That market had more than 60,000-70,000 rupees every month. People used to sell chilies, but those chilies are not happening because there is no rain. So such problems are there, and we know that how wildlife problem is also increasing. Absolutely. Because of this. Because when people go out because of migration, the wild animals think that this is also jungle, which earlier used to be their place, their homes. All
like this happened in the COVID lockdown also this year.
Yes, very rightly, Sanjay said that this because of this COVID, people are returning. So this is a chance, and this is a hope that these people want to. They have seen the problems in the urban areas where they have gone away from their home.
That will discuss, Hrideyash. Yeah. We'll discuss separately, because COVID has a very important angle. It pushed back people in their home ground and also make them understand what's happening.
One line that it has given a
just before I go over to Chandrika, just a quick supplementary to you. That do you feel, Hrideyash, that government? I'm specifically talking about the local government, the panchayat and the regional government, are they sensitive to what's happening on ground, or they are not really sensitive in that way? What's your findings, Hrideyash?
So
you're a journalist, so you must have probed that.
So I will put it this way, that they are sensitive or not, but this is their compulsion, because it's a small state. I mean, Uttarakhand in per se is a small state. This is a compulsion for them, because all leaders now understand this. So I cannot say they are not sensitive. I cannot say they are very sensitive, but this is a compulsion, and this is being realized at one level. And Chief Minister himself said last year that this has to be addressed, because 1,400 villages out of 15,000 villages are ghost villages, and this is a very conservative estimate. Still, as we talk, 1,400 villages, there nobody lives there. I mean, as we speak,
this is driven out by climate change impact.
No. Because of migration. But as I said, because of migration, but the climate change is definitely accelerating this problem.
Adding to the problem. Okay, great. Let's hear from Gothami. Gothami, what's happening in Sri Lanka? We have heard India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. What's happening in Sri Lanka? You are having sea all around. What's your finding? In fact, I call Sri Lanka as a T20 country, because in Sri Lanka, it's a wonderful place to be in. In 2 hours, you can go to the sea. From sea, you can go to the mountain. So I call it a T20 tourism. So what's your experience in Sri Lanka, Gothami?
Thank you, Jayanta. I think now I will start where you stopped. Actually, when compared to the other country, Sri Lanka is a very small country. In that case, we have identified 4 locations for our research. Two communities mainly agriculture based, that is rice cultivated areas, North Central Province and Eastern Province, and their main production is rice. The other one is a hill country, plantation community, so tea cultivation. And we have a specific community, so this is very prone to landslide. There's a very big landslide in 2016, and the whole entire village is washed out. So that is in the Sabaragamu province. So this is how this is the details of our locations. But I think now in our situation is somewhat different to the other countries. Okay. So in Sri Lanka, we find mostly the short-term temporary migration. Achha. So if we consider about the 2 agricultural communities in this is North Central Anuradhapura and Eastern Province Trincomalee, they are mainly they are smallholder farmers, depending on the rain-fed agriculture. Anyway, there's a seasonal migration during the off-season. But when we are doing the research, we identified that the frequency, number of people migrated, and the days of migration has increased. So this is where we see the link between migration and climate change. The main drive for this migration is due to the less or loss of income due of the food production. It's due to erratic rainfall, high temperature, long spell of dry period, as well as scarcity of water. So this is the background of this agriculture food farming community in these areas. And the situation in the hill country, where we are focusing plantation, is different. This is plantation community, specific communities. So they are in that area, they have separate social systems. The system is different. And tea is a crop which is a very climatic sensitive. When you're doing this research, we identified that the tea production has decreased.
Production has gone down.
Yeah, gone down. So this has promoted and act as a push factor for these plantation workers to go out. Anyway, again, the people go out for off season or when they don't have the sufficient tree production in that area. But in our research, we identified that now because of the low production, so there's a difficulty only to contribute with the climate change, but there are other contributing factors like lack of maintenance of the plantation and also other increased cost of production. But there's a link. We identify there could be link of the climate thing.
So there is a push factor.
There's a push factor, yeah. And the other interesting factor of the communities where we had experienced a landslide. If I explain about this particular community, they are very self-sufficient community. So they have small tea plantation in that area. Suddenly, there was a massive landslide, and entire community was replaced. So they never expected this type of situation. Anyway, Kaigol is a landslide-prone area. But
the landslide-prone is a prone area is also being affected. Yeah. Okay, so in your case, basically what you are saying that climate change is impacting, might be directly sometimes to the economic door, and also the landslide is also an issue. So we'll be coming to that, and I'll ask that how your government is reacting to it. But let's go to Sanjay. I hope that we have the entire panel. Sanjay, we heard the entire panel. And I should congratulate you because it's such a wonderful panel and you have built up across South Asia. So we have heard that every area has issues and there are a lot of common factors to it. And as I understand that there are 2 parts of it. One is the physical impact of climate change. The climate change actually pushing it away from you from a place. Another is an indirect impact, the long-term impact of the economy being affected, and that in turn is affecting you. So it actually works in tandem. What's your kind of point, Sanjay, that Boon or Bane factor? Because in Sundarbans, so for example, I've been working a lot with Sundarbans for more than a decade or so. I find that there is something called migration economy. The migrants are bringing money. They are going to Kerala. They are going to other southern Indian states and also the Delhi and bringing money back home or sending money. And with that money, people are actually kind of developing resources. So in a way, that's a migration triggered economy. But now with COVID, they all understand the kind of inadequacy of it. So what's your take on, Sanjay, this Boon or Bane factor, how it works on?
Well, Jayanta, if you look at migration, of course, there is an economy around it. But I think the most sustainable economic model is the fact that if the local economy is which is strengthened, because that gives benefit to everyone. Because let's understand where they go. They come to the cities or they go to the countries where there is hardly any insecurity. In fact, we are working on another project where we're looking at vulnerability of poor populations in urban areas, and it's really, they do not go to a better place. Okay. They agree on behalf of their family. The strongest person physically, they agree to go, and that's the skilled person in a village who moved to a city, urban area as an unskilled worker. So let's understand that. Then they don't have any bargaining power. Whatever work they get, they take it. There are no basic amenities. They do not entail. They live in very small houses, small room, 8 people, 10 people together. In fact, in Mumbai, there have been cases that the bed are given on hourly basis. So there are people who work at night. They don't pay for the night bed. They pay for the day bed, and there are people who work in the daytime. They use the same bed at night. So there have been, that kind of situation also. Of course, they are very prone to exploitation also, especially on the human rights aspect. Yes, there are minimum guarantee, minimum labor wages, and all that, but still there are exploitation. They don't have any voice also. They are hated communities. Their people don't like them. Because they think that these are the people who will compete with them, who will take their job opportunities. And and it's not only in South Asia, it's globally everywhere. I mean, look at the campaign we saw by Trump political ideology, that how migrants need to leave the US. So this is everywhere. So migrants are not seen as, unless a few countries in Europe, migrants are not seen in a good way. So yes, they do bring money, but that money is not enough. They transfer almost 60-70% of their money. The rest of the money they use to survive. In fact, when we spoke to the communities, and all panelists will agree, we heard it from them also. They says, given the opportunity, if we can get what we are earning in urban areas, if we get half of it, we will not go back. Because it's not only about money, it's also about decent life, respectful life they aspire for.
Absolutely.
So that's the basic dignity they want. And keeping that in mind, it is certainly a bane, it's not a boon. Especially push factor triggered fluctuation that has affected farm-based enterprises, water scarcity that has left farmers totally dependent on rain-fed agriculture, and then they have to migrate because they are being hit by extreme disasters one after another. And then there is a gap. It's normally we have seen in many places, if one area used to get around 2 crops in a year, and because of degradation, it's only 1 crop, the rest of the time they go and migrate. And seasonal migration, we heard from Gothami also, or temporary migration, we also heard that, they migrate, they earn, they come back, and then they go back to the agriculture. If it would have been a boon, economy-wise, they wouldn't have come back. They will go, that's a pull factor. They'll go, they'll earn more money, and they'll send money, and then they're better off. But I think that's not happening.
And also, Sanjay, that pull factor, push factor is that when this COVID happened and the lockdown was announced, at least in India, I don't know about the other countries, what happened out there. They all kind of, they came back to their respective places. I don't think that they're all being willingly came back. They actually are pushed out, I would say hounded out from their homes in Delhi, in Noida, in cutting across the country from the major cities. This, you say that these people are not welcome to the society they used to work. So they have been pushed out and they have been thrown out. They had to work days and hours on rail lines and through the forest and lost lives. And so that pretty clearly point out the quality of life that is. So if we take quality of life, I think it doesn't improve either in the place of origin of migration or also in the destination point. That what my understanding is. Do you agree to that?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Jayanta, on this. And staying in a village means they are living in a homogeneous mass. in a community that support each other during difficult times. Also, in cities, they are vulnerable on every front.
Okay, let's hear from the panel very quickly. I'd say we have about 15 minutes time, so we need to have a few other rounds. Very quickly, maybe starting with Maryam again. That what's the finding, Maryam? The people who are migrating to a point, are they having what we're just discussing? Are they having better quality of life, similar quality of life, or poorer quality of life? What's your finding, Maryam, in the destination points?
So, Jayanta, there is kind of mixed findings in both Tharparkar and Muzaffargarh when it comes to whether climate-induced migration has made their life better or worse. In some cases, it has made life easier. If I particularly talk about one of the cases in which there was a girl, Sumbal, whose family migrated from rural to urban area. And during those floods, her father also, came across with heart stroke. So, and after some time, he was gone from this world. And those three daughters and one mother, they made their life better. They also worked on the roads as a labor, but they, with the passage of time, they have made their life better. There are examples where their life were better, but then there were also examples from Tharparkar and also from Muzaffargarh where old women migrated to the cities. If I talk about Tharparkar, they moved to Karachi, which is urban area in Pakistan. Their life was more miserable, as Sanjay mentioned in his finding, that they were unskilled. That made their life miserable. So there are mixed cases. In some cases, life better. In other cases, it wasn't.
Okay. Dipak, what's your finding? Is it the same, or that this is a mixed bag?
I would say it's sort of a mixed bag, because farmers who have been migrating, especially for sugarcane, they are temporary migrants. So when they go to the places of migration, generally the working conditions are not very good. As Sanjay had already indicated, the housing, and also there are some problems with not having basic amenities. At times, women are not very safe. Secondly, there is an additional burden on women there also, because they have to work plus as well as tend to their families. In many of the cases, women have reported that they wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then they cook the food and do all the household chores, and then they go to their work. And even when they return back from their work, they have to again do additional work, look after their small children. So that is the case. But what also interesting finding that we found out was that there is a slightly change in migration pattern. So earlier, the older generation was preferring sugarcane cutting, but the young generation, the youths, they are not willing to basically work as sugarcane laborers. So now,
the mindset has changed also.
They are going to nearby cities like Pune and Mumbai, where they work as unskilled laborers in cities, or they work in factories. So there they might have better opportunities, but again, that's not a permanent kind of a
That's not a permanent solution.
So they have to come back. They have to come back to their.
They have to come back. Yes, fine. So it's basically what I understand, that maybe in the short term, people tend to get some benefits, mainly the economic benefits, but the long term or the long haul is not really a good proposition to migrate. And as Sanjay pointed out, that you have this, you have that social insecurity around. That's very important. Let's very quickly talk to Mohammed Shamsuddoha Sahab. That what's in Bangladesh? The same thing. There's a one part is the quality of life back home, where they're leaving the people back home, and one is what's happening in the new area. So what's the situation out there?
Situation is more or less similar because migration starts with the male member primarily. This is seasonal migration, economic migration. But when a male member finds some good jobs and good networks in urban slums, then they bring their entire family, children and women. But in many cases, the elderly people, like elderly disabled, they cannot migrate because they don't have any job opportunities over there. So they become more exposed to the risk and they become trapped to the situation. Absolutely. And nobody is talking about this trapped population. On the other hand, when they migrate to the urban slums, they generally employ to the, poor quality job like garments industries, sales girls, or informal sector. You know that in Bangladesh, around more than 80% jobs are in informal sector jobs, and they are poor quality jobs. So all of them are rural migrants. And during COVID, you know that most of the people forced to be migrate to their origin. This is reverse migration. Again, they are become the primary victim of COVID also. So in either case, climate change victim, climate change displaced are more risk exposed in their origin and also in the urban slums.
Both places. Absolutely.
Right.
Let's hear Gothami. Gothami, what's happening out there? Very quickly.
I think now more or less similar findings.
More or less similar.
When we consider these people in Anuradhapura and Trincomalee, the traditional people or the farmers, elderly people who engage in agriculture migrate as the last resort. So if the conditions are better, definitely they will come back. And the life in the destination is not easy for them. Most of them work as a skilled or unskilled laborer. But when it comes to the plantation sector, so these people, the plantation workers, in part, some people mention that they would like to migrate because they get the higher wages, as well as they get good respect and the self-dignity outside the plantation.
Okay. So basically on the similar ground. Hrideyash, what's your finding in Uttarakhand? How these families are...
Jayanta, I'll give you a different perspective here, because all people are not migrated, as I said, because of climate change, though climate change is a driving, accelerating factor. So all people are also not complaining. Some of them are happy and they do not want to go back home. Some of them who had come back during COVID, they want to go back. But still they are paying. How they are paying? Because in their places in Uttarakhand, they have clean air and clean water. But what they are getting in Delhi and Noida is 900 AQI. You know, we all know safe limit is 30, 40, 50. So there, I have known people, I have met people during doing this study that their small kids go to, they have to, use nebulizers during these November to February when the, AQI goes high. But that's why I said, though it's a climate issue, we are discussing a climate issue. It is also a bad governance issue.
The bad governance issue.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And this has to be realized.
Absolutely. I think that this extremely good point that Hrideyash has just made. Sanjay, we have just, I think, about 4-5 minutes time, even not that perhaps. But this is a bad governance issue. So we have heard all this eminent people working in the area and from the reports. Sanjay, what's your take on that? How you take it forward? Would like to take it forward? This is bad governance because you are having bad governance at source. These people they need to push out. Not only climate change. Climate change actually adds on to the existing vulnerabilities. That's what we understood from all of them. So, what's Sanjay your take on that?
Well, I would agree with Hrideyash on bad governance. Let me also give you an example. When we are talking about climate-induced migration or any kind of migration because of push factors, this phenomena is not visible in developed countries where good governance or where development has already been achieved to a certain degree, that their resilience is there. They don't have to migrate. They are not forced to migrate. While in developing countries, our governance has been slow. It's also that development agenda deficit has been there. There has not been, we have not been able to develop at quality level so that our resilience would have been built, and we didn't have to. For example, for last many years we have been working on watershed, projects or interventions through all development schemes or diversification of agriculture for income, increasing the income. So we have been working on that, but those interventions has failed. And that is why now we face a situation where climate change has accelerated, as they said, or has put additional burden, and it has brought many people who were above the vulnerable line below the vulnerable line. They have exposed many people to the vulnerability. Earlier, because of development deficit, they were holding it fine. So yes, it is also, it is more complicated. It got complicated because of climate impact.
I share a small experience of myself with you from Indian Sundarbans. It's very interesting. In Sundarbans, normally, you procure land. If you are having money, you procure land in the center of the islands. That's within the island, that's the area where the value of the land is normally more than because of the vulnerabilities. Now, what happened when this ILA happened in 2009, and then this series of cyclones happening, Bulbul in November 2019, and then this Amphan in the few months back, it's found that when this kind of rivers overtop the embankments, those are the areas, only the embankments, because they're high, they're having more security compared to the internal area, because those are low areas. Because then the saline water, I think Shamsuddoha will kind of agree with me, that kind of engulf the central area and make the entire agricultural land saline, and they don't get out of it. So they are a new kind of poor. The people who used to be reasonably well off and rich in that perspective in those areas have turned poor because they have lost all their land. So it's a very strange way these are happening. These are working. And I would say personally that climate change has become a character. In fact, in Ghodamara Island in Sundarbans, many of you have heard about Ghodamara. It's a sinking island in Sundarbans. There, you won't find, in the rest of the India, you find that the women don't get partners. Normally, there's an issue, social issue. But in Ghodamara, males don't have brides. Nobody wants to get the kind of daughter married in Ghodamara because of the climate insecurity there. So but the women in Ghodamara are being married off outside. But the women don't come in Ghodamara. That's becoming a male island because nobody wants to get married out there. So those are very, very strange kind of scenarios being generated. Before I end, Sanjay, what's from here? International Glasgow in 2021. What do you expect this migration issue to, how much to go up, and how you plan as a civil society volunteer, a civil society expert to take it forward and also the security issue, because this is a big issue of this climate migrants to be identified as formal refugees. That's a big issue is going on. What's your, very briefly, we have 2-3 minutes time, very quickly on that.
I'll take 1 minute, Jayanta. One, we are launching our national reports in coming 2 weeks. Okay. Then we are of 6 countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, 6 countries. Then we are also going to have 2 regional reports launched because they are for 2 projects, but we are looking at 2 different aspects of South Asia. And then we are planning to get into a 2 years advocacy mode. Now we have research, we have data, we have policy analysis, good understanding how policy exists. We want to get into advocacy mode. We really want to partner with media, people like you, Hrideyash. We really want to partner with government at national level because it's an issue for them also, and make sure that forced migration is seen as with empathy, is seen as as a phenomena or people who need help wherever they go. Then second, on the global level, internationally, we are going to push for climate finance for loss and damage, plus recognition of migration as a phenomena because of loss and damage, so that globally countries can agree on a framework. I mean, there are many platforms which are discussing about it, and we really want to bring all those together and make sure there is a global understanding to deal with social and legal protection for climate migrants. Okay, and how you see the security issue of climate refugees being taken up in the future? Well, of course, the way it is being handled now is not good, and that is why we are seeking social and legal protection. So that people, wherever at the destination they go, people receive them with respect, receive them with concern, receive them with security, and because they add to the local economy wherever they go. And then legal protection, if one migrant move from one country to another, there is certain kind of legal. For example, there is a legal protection for prisoner of war, right? So why can't there be a legal certain kind of convention for migrants who are not forced, who do not move to another country with as a national security threat? So far, I think the logic against the climate refugees has been, many of our panelists were pointing out that
the governments or the UN experts sometimes are pointing out these are temporary events. The people come back. So if it can be established through the studies that there are a huge amount of migrants who are permanently have to migrate. So then I think this agenda of climate refuge is being formally acknowledged at UN level should be strengthened, I believe. So I can see in Glasgow a side event on your report.
Absolutely.
Perhaps.
We will have a side
and
event.
I think many of this we'll be meeting in persons perhaps, and we'll discuss that at that point of time. I think it's great. I think it's great. And thank you everybody for being here. And I think before I conclude, let me share that I think thanks to Cancer and South Asia, this report of understanding each other's dynamics of migration. Say, I know about what's happening at my backyard in India. Hrideyash knows about Uttarakhand. I know about West Bengal. Dipak in Maharashtra. But to know that Gothami, from Maryam, from Shamsuddoha, that what's happening in these countries, and we find that in most cases there are commonalities. Government trying, but not trying enough. Not having a holistic kind of plan up their sleeve. They are basically kind of firewalling. Then the people are not good, both in their destination and also at the source. There may be some temporary economic benefits, but the long-term social benefit far outweighs that short-term economic benefits. And those are common agendas across. So I believe that this discussion will go on, and we'll keep on discussing in this platform at least. And definitely once this report comes out, we'll definitely again meet all of us. Perhaps new people will be joining there and kind of will work on these issues. And thank you for the discussion today. Thank you for all your time. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed it to the hilt. I hope you have as well. So let's see how the people react to it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.